Why? Why does your business feel like a roller coaster? Why are some months great and the others are super stressful and you're like pulling your hair out? Why does growth feel super chaotic instead of more peace? Today, we are speaking upon consistency, why it's super important, and why it's the difference between surviving and scaling. Hey, I'm Shay Toya. I've spent more than 10 years in construction, working behind the scenes in marketing, hiring, and I've seen how overwhelming it can be to grow a business. That's how we've learned to build a sustainable business using clear systems, strong communication, and intentional recruiting. If you're ready for better hiring, smarter remarketing, and a business that doesn't fall apart when you step away, welcome to Building Better Contractor Businesses. Contractors don't struggle because they aren't working hard. Every contractor I know works very, very hard. They struggle because they aren't operating consistently. They're receiving inconsistent leads. They're having inconsistent workflows. They're pricing to their clients inconsistent, and they are having inconsistent communication, inconsistent leadership, and inconsistent branding. And inconsistency does create a lot of stress. Systems create consistency. Consistency creates stability, and stability builds confidence. When you're doing something for a very long time and doing it over and over and over again, you're going to become more confident because you're going to become better. When you do something over and over again, I call it doing the boring stuff, because the boring stuff is something that you have to do it over and over again. The hype is no longer there. Now you're a professional because you've done it over and over again. But there was a time in our business where I wasn't super consistent. I would implement something once and never do it again. We would get advice from someone and immediately pivot. Even what we were doing was working. We would start tracking something and stop. We would start a process, then abandon it. We'd try a system, then switch it. We were constantly adjusting, constantly trying to find a better way, constantly reacting. Because of that, nothing had time to actually work. The team did not know what to expect. The processes changed all the time. It felt super chaotic, and I could only imagine how our team felt. Even if the revenue looks great, sometimes we had chased advice because we doubted ourselves. We were young entrepreneurs. When we got started, we were 21 and 22. So a lot of the people that we were looking up to were, maybe in their 40s, 50s, and they were doing this for a very, very long time. So we were like, oh, they must know a lot more than us. We assumed someone also knew better. We thought maybe we were doing it wrong, but the real problem was not effort. It was inconsistency. Consistency is about, again, being consistent isn't about doing something once. It's about doing the right things long enough so you could see a result. If you want to scale your business, not just survive, not just focus on paying your bills, you have to build consistency into your business. When it comes to being consistent, a lot of times, if you're doing the right things, something will work, and the advice that someone is giving you will work. But if you're not consistently doing it, it may work once, and if you don't continue, it's not going to continue working because you stopped. And here's where most contractors lose it. Number one is consistent leads. Possibly the same person who's answering the phone isn't. It changes. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's your admin. Maybe it's your estimator. Maybe it's whoever can reach the phone. So for that reason, that person who answers the phone isn't receiving practice because they're not consistently answering their phone. Or maybe that also causes where, oh, someone else is going to get it. And maybe if everyone thinks that, then no one gets it. So I think that's very important for you to have an idea who's going to answer the phone. How fast are leads coming in? Are you tracking on a consistently basis? Very, very important. Is follow-up happening? I know in the past this was an issue for us because we would get busy with something else and then stop following up. And so maybe someone that we were working with for 3, 6 months ago, we stopped following up and that person forgot about us. It happens. So it's very important that you are constantly following up. If what you're doing changes on a consistent basis on how you're receiving leads, you cannot have a predictable revenue with unpredictable follow-up. And I believe if you've been in business for a very long time, maybe you are currently not following up with your clients. As I said, we've been there, but we're doing better now. So I think that's very, very important for you to have a consistent lead follow-up. Number 2 is consistent workflow. What happens when a job comes in? It's just like answering the phone. If, what is it that you're going to do when a job comes in? Being consistent of how you handle that is very, very important. Who schedules that? Is it the person who's answering the phone? Do you have a link where you're sending people? I think it's very, very important that we keep that consistent. Who's ordering materials? This is something that we've kind of had to figure out in the past. Should it be our office admin? Should it be our project manager? Should it be our accountant? We decided our project manager is best to order materials because he's already seeing what's needed and he knows exactly what we need for the following projects. So we had decided it should be our project manager who's ordering materials because he's already doing it. And instead of having us tell someone, our office admin, hey, we need this, our project manager is currently able to do it. But who knows, that may change as we grow. Who communicates with the client? We recently hired a project coordinator who's in charge of making sure that everything is going well with the project, and then also making sure that we are keeping track of what our senior estimator is doing, what our project manager is doing, and our accountant when it comes to invoicing our clients. So I think that is very, very important. These processes need to be repeatable. They need to be something that you're doing on a consistent basis. And that is how you get and develop a actual process. If every job is handled differently, stress will always be high and consistency removes chaos. Number 3 is consistent pricing. Are you discounting when you're scared? This is why it's super, super important that you have consistent of way that you're handling leads. Because if you have a streamline of leads coming in, then you're not worried about having to discount because you're scared on what's going to happen or how you're going to pay payroll. When prices randomly, you're just pricing, you don't have no idea exactly what something costs. This is also going to hurt you with your margins and they will disappear. Pricing isn't about discipline. Consistency protects your profits. Number 4, consistent money. Be sure to review. If you are not your accountant, or if you're not the person who's reconciling, be sure to review it with the person who is, making sure that everything is correct. We personally are meeting with our accountant on a weekly basis. If you're not able to, then decide where you can or when you can meet on a consistent basis and do that every time, no matter what. Be sure to get that into a rhythm. Are your numbers being reviewed? It is so easy to forget to review your numbers. As I said, we are currently reviewing our numbers on a weekly basis. I've talked to some contractors and they're doing it on a monthly basis. But for us, we've found that on a weekly basis just works. That way we can get the questions answered for our accountant and we can get it done. So schedule that onto your calendar. I think that's very, very important. Also, monitoring expenses. And then if you don't know how much something costs or where your break even point is, how are you supposed to know exactly how much money you need to make to at least break even? And when I say break even, meaning the amount of money you need to have in your business so you can afford to pay your bills. And these things should be reviewed consistently. As I said, add that to your calendar and then do it consistently, no matter what. Number 5 is consistent leadership. Are your expectations clear? Do you have clear roles? I think this is something that in 2025, we really drove deep, understanding what our roles are. I believe our team has an exact idea of what their role is within the organization, but that's because we meet with our leadership team on a weekly basis on Fridays. So they know their expectations. We're also working out of the book EOS. So last year we read that book. If you've never heard of it, every quarter we have rocks that we're supposed to follow. And it's either yes or no, did they complete that? And that's a way that we are making sure that we are consistent with our leadership is our weekly and quarterly meetings that we have every week at the same day. And then our quarterly meetings are completed on a quarterly basis on the same day as well. And our quarterly meetings are actually completed in person. That's something that's been very, very helpful. We'll feed our team. We'll go over what we expect for the new quarter. And then also with the book EOS, your rocks, our team gets the ownership of deciding what their rocks are from taking a look of the things that they were working on last quarter, what was completed, what was not completed, and what are things that they are going to be working on this quarter. There was a time where I was creating rocks goals for everyone, and it was more work for me. And so now our team gets to actually create their own rocks. It gives their ownership of exactly of what they're going to complete. Also, I've recently made sure that our standards are enforced. I followed Disneyland philosophies on their standards and seen how we could have the same type of standards, even though we are not we're not Disneyland, but how are the things that we can put into place within construction. And some of the things are, making sure that we are following up with clients within a 24-hour period. That's an internal standard for K&B Communications. Is very, very important to us. Also, another standard that we have enforced is customers should never hear your internal stress. It's one of the things that studying Disney's philosophies that they talked about was, one of the standards is your customer should never hear about a stress that they're currently having. So I think that's very, very important, making sure that you are meeting on a weekly, quarterly basis. Are those actually scheduled into your calendar and actually putting it into your calendar as well as your team's calendar is making sure that they're attending as well. We personally meet on a weekly basis with our leadership team, and the entire staff also meets on a weekly basis as well on Wednesday mornings. So I think that's very, very important that you schedule that in your calendar as well. And if these aren't consistent, there is going to be a problem because your team is going to be confused on their roles and what is it that they're expected to do. Number 6 is consistent brand. I think this one really, really matters. Does your quality change? Another thing when it comes to branding, I think I've been very focused on is that when we send something out, we're using the same font, we're using the same colors, that when you look at something, you're like, oh, that came from K&B Communications. So, branding comes in many different ways. So I think that's very, very important that when it comes to your brand, you're all staying aligned. And then also, does your communication style change? How is it that you're speaking to your customers? As I said, when it comes to our internal standards, one of the things is that we're not speaking upon internal stress. The customer should never hear that. So these are just things that we are branding ourselves for internally. And then also, does your message change? Consistency builds reputation, and reputation builds referrals. More and more people will refer you business if they're seeing that it's stable and consistent. Inconsistent businesses create exhausted owners, and exhausted owners do not scale. Surviving contractors react. Scaling contractors operate on a consistent basis. You do not need more hustle. You need more consistency. Where are you inconsistent right now? Is it leads? Is it workflow? Is it pricing? Is it leadership? Is it your brand? This week, pick one area and tighten it. Don't pivot. Don't abandon it. Stay disciplined. Be sure to join our Facebook community and tell us exactly which area you're going to be working on. Let's build consistency together. You don't need more hustle. You need systems that create consistency. And consistency is what separates contractors who survive from those who scale. Let's build a better contractor business. If you believe that this episode brought you real clarity, be sure to share it with another contractor who also needs it. And if you want to keep this conversation going, be sure to join our community of contractors inside Building Better Contractor Businesses Facebook group. This is a community where we talk through the real problems that you are having in your business. The link will be found in our show notes. And remember, we are not just completing projects. We are building better contractor businesses. I will see you next time.